But just get your honest feedback. You know, do you recommend the boot camp? Is this what you expected? And things like that. Okay. But besides that, my main purpose is this cake. To congratulate you guys for making a halfway mark. You guys are doing amazing. I know you guys might think I say this to all my classes, but I don't. I think you guys are the bomb. Like, you guys come in with so much experience. You guys are so positive, and not every class is like that. Trust me. So I want to say thank you for making my job a little bit easier, because you guys have been definitely amazing. So my little piece of feedback. Yay! I don't know about the experience, so we'll go with it. Even though it's going on, we're at experience now.
Okay.
Would you like to take now?
Yeah, let's do it now. They'll need the sugar high.
Yeah, let's start off with the sugar.
Well, how long is it going to be until the sugar crash?
Well, yeah, we'll have to deal with the crash.
Yeah.
We'll deal with that later.
Let's just pace ourselves. Let's pace ourselves. Save a little bit.
All right. I'm okay with being the only person.
Yeah, you have a nice
What happened downtown?
Apparently it was over.
Oh my God.
So they whipped out a gun.
I mean, if it were me, I'd just like shoot him in the
Madison does one. Yes. It's actually my boss's birthday. He's got the bag.
Okay. Oh, so he's the guy whose bag was trying to be stolen. He's wanted now. Why? But it was his bag.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe he'll get away with it if he's a like stand your ground state. So.
Yeah, like
Like
I
the
would be
fact
like,
that he ran.
hey guys, here I am. Yes, I shot him. He tried to take my Gucci bag.
Yeah, let's see what they say. It might be updated by now.
You get yourself a Gucci bag and have someone try to take it. You can blame me for shooting the guy. Right?
Let's see. Police said they were still searching for a white male approximately 5 inches tall. They released a video of the man they were looking for. This is a developing story. Yeah, I guess they still haven't found him. Wait, that's the guy?
Well, if I was joking, I'd say
Okay, this is an energy drink. It's just ice cream tea. Of course,
Okay, so while we're getting our cake and everything, has everyone gotten both MySql and either SQL Workbench or MySql Pro installed? Everybody, yes? Anybody who hasn't, raise your hand. Anybody having trouble, raise your hand. Okay, a few of you. TAs, as soon as you guys finish your cake. Yeah, so Workbench or MySql Pro. one of those, or you can install WAMP. Did any of you install MAMP or WAMP?
Yeah, it was part of the pre-work.
Yeah, so if you have that, see if you can go to, if you have WAMP or MAMP and you're having trouble with SQL, see if you can start your WAMP or your MAMP and then go to PHPMyAdmin. Because if you can do that, then you're pretty much good.
Yeah.
Melvin, do you have MAMP? Yeah, WAMP. For you, it's WAMP.
Yeah.
For you, it's MAMP. You have MAMP? See if you can go start it, and it will say start.
Wait, but how are we supposed to do it? Just. Just like regular SQL.
Updates.
You guys have more? Do I give work?
I was just like, you know what? I'd rather and not fall asleep.
I live with baddies, but they're not baddies. Yeah, the two guys I live with, they
Just like everything that went, everything that could have gone. I jumped in, yeah, I'm live. I jumped in, tied the line on the rep, waiting, and my regulator started free flowing. I had a problem with my equipment, and it made doing a scuba charter. Just today was such a mess.
Oh my gosh. And I was
Huh? Rarely. Unfortunately, I wish I saw more. That's like the highlight of the day.
no spaces, just local. Wait for the new. You already did it? You already said it? I just wanted to look into it.
Sam, you have MySql installed?
I have MySql and
I was watching a YouTube video.
I heard you came
is it like both or well, here's the
Yeah, start service.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
there we go.
Start open service.
But it's somehow bounced.
That's
why I can't.
Okay, so did you stop the MySql? Try opening it.
I did.
Start service. Hey guys, I'm just having everyone do map or map and give you my ID instead of doing.
Well, you have it. It is Tuesday. Yeah.
This is new. I'm so excited.
No, I started this week.
Okay.
And then if they ever tell you to stop your studies, that's when you'll stop.
I'm actually very clear.
That was my no, Daddy Wall.
Everyone have cake? Who wants cake? Everyone, cake? Who wants cake?
Oh, yeah, they were getting another.
Have your cake and eat it too.
Oh, okay, no cake.
It's just nice of you, making sure.
For you, some of us are getting seconds.
So we're not using MySql, we're
Wait, did everyone else update their resumes?
We're gonna be using PHP my admin. Yeah. If you already have workstation, it doesn't matter, it's just like, we don't, it's the.
Allow them to comment. You know, they can just comment. They don't have to add this.
If it doesn't work, okay, how many more people don't have MySqL and admin? Okay, Pedro, got you. No one else? Everyone else good? John, yeah, we're gonna go with you individually. I'm just trying to see, Jose. Yeah, that's fine. You got it working? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you're the only one, Pedro. Good. We are way ahead. The other class, like more than half the people didn't get it installed. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I sent out the video guy. So I mean, this is supposed to be one of the hardest things.
What?
Maybe it's just being
No, it
difficult
took
than
them like an
that.
hour to get MySql working. Madison, are you good now?
Yeah, she's good.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to start class now and talk a little bit about MySql, what it is, what we're going to do with it, all that good stuff. So, who would like to tell us what MySql is? Dan? Okay. Good. It's a relational database which uses SQL. Anyone else? Structured query language. Awesome. I think that's
And the word structure name there, because the big difference between our MySqL and the future MongoDB.
right. Good. So let's talk about that. So we talked about MongoDB a little bit, and we know about like Firebase database structures like that. They use JavaScript objects, right? We are all familiar with that. SQL is a sort of an older paradigm. It uses tables. And you can think of a table as being sort of just like a spreadsheet. So you have rows, and then you would have columns. So like a row would be first name, and then last name, and then I could do phone number. Say I wanted to have a database that held information about my customers, that held these 3 pieces of information. So then I would have a new row. Say I want to enter myself, I'd enter new row, first name, last name, and phone number. Okay, makes sense. And then I want to add somebody else. It just adds a new row. So it's basically just like a spreadsheet, right? So pretty simple. So what are the 3 things that we basically need to do with these MySQL databases? We need to create, which in MySQL parlance is called insert. Then we need to write to a database. We need to update, and then we need to delete. So those 3 things. These are what are called by computer wonks to be CRUD functions, C-R-U-D, Create, write, update, delete. So we have the code that writes this. It's pretty standard in all languages, and there are even tools that pretty much do it for you, which we'll get into talking about. The other thing relational databases can do is they can relate to each other. So let's say we have customer records, and then we also have another database table that's projects. So this is customers. And then this is like projects. So the first type of relationship that we have between our databases is what's called a one-to-one. So projects might just be like project name and then say date. These are the two pieces of information we're keeping on our projects. And then we'll just call this one project website, date, April. So then each of these rows is going to have a unique identifier or an ID, which gets added automatically, starting at 1 usually. So then this would also get its unique identifier starting at 1. So if we wanted to link these together, link our customer to a project, say, I would give it like another column here called project ID. And then I would give it the ID of this row here. Do you see how that works? So now we have a relationship between this table and this table. Everyone see how that works? And so you can have different types of relationships. There's one-to-one, where if you have one record that links to another record. Typically what you'll have though is one-to-many. So say one customer might have many projects. Yes?
Sorry, right, what did you write in the middle there?
Oh, project ID. Yeah, so this is what is called a foreign key field. I'll write this here too, FK for foreign key. It's foreign because this table is foreign to this table. So you have a foreign key that links this, says that this is ID 1 from this table links back to this table. So that way we have our project linked to our customer. So that's the first type of relationship, which is called one-to-one. Then there's one-to-many, which is actually more common because say each customer might have one or more projects going on. So I might have another project in addition to website. I have, I don't know, business card or something. And that's also April 2018. And then this would also link to here. So you would have actually your foreign key field here. So that's, and then the other type of relationship is many-to-many, which is a bit more complicated. And we'll get into talking about that later, Sim.
So this would be like assigning the customer a project. You could also take a project and assign it a customer. So there's like two different ways to do it.
Yeah, there's two different ways to do it, and you got to think about the way the relationships would work. So if it's a one-to-many, then the many would have a key to the one. So in this case, it wouldn't make sense for me to have my foreign key field here since it's a one-to-many. There are many projects to one customer. It would make sense to do it the other way, to have the foreign key field on project, and then call this. Usually the foreign keys are the name of the foreign table and then underscore ID like that. So it'd be customer ID and then customer ID is 1 for this one and then it's also 1 for this one. See how that works?
And that's by convention.
Yeah, that's a convention. Okay, so let's see what's next. So here are our objectives for today. Go ahead and write these down here. Objective number 1 is to have MySQL Workbench or SQL Pro or PHP MyAdmin running. So, have MySQL running. You guys did a really great job with that. Congratulations for getting it working. Number 2 is we're going to create a local host connection to MySQL server and have everyone successfully connect to it I think that we've already done that, actually. If you've got PHP MyAdmin working or SQL Workbench actually working, then you should be good on that one as well. Is anybody not able to connect their SQL Pro or MySQL Workbench? Oh, okay. Do you have MAMP installed? Okay, I'll get you set up with that. That should be easier, actually. Everyone, I recommend that you use MAMP and PHP MyAdmin. That's going to be the easiest thing to get you guys up and running. Yeah.
I'm trying to I have it all downloaded, but it's not giving me an option to set up the server. It's giving me like a cloud.
Okay, I'll have to look at that with you individually. We'll figure it out. So number 3, to successfully create, use, and populate a MySQL database with data. What good are databases without data? MySQL DB add data. Okay, and then number 4 finally is to successfully create, populate, and select data from a MySQL table. And I'll just write here, CRUD function. Okay. Everyone got this? These 3 things we're doing. We have our MySQL servers up and running. We're going to connect to them with an admin. Could be PHP MyAdmin, which is what I'm recommending. Could also be MySQL Workbench or MySQL Pro. Then we're going to set up our MySQL DB and add data, because you can actually have more than one database on your MySQL server if you want to. And there can be more than one table per database. Then we're going to do some create, write, update, and delete functions on the tables that we create. Everyone good with this? Anyone have no idea what we're doing? Okay, awesome. So let's just take, just to get everyone up to speed, if the TAs and I could walk around and just get anyone who doesn't have their MySQL Workbench or whatever updated. I think Emil had a question. Okay, so you installed this. You installed MySQL. Okay, do you have an no, you should.
I'm using MySQL.
Yeah, just see if you can cancel that. Okay, just do commands safer. You can launch and then
Sure.
Okay, you got it. Okay, let's do this another way. Can you put out? I'm trying to have everyone do it at the same time. Okay, to put out this and now oh, how come this command is big? Do the spotlight? Spotlight? Yeah.
Oh, well,
Oh,
no, there's 2 different programs. Jonathan's gonna help you out with that one.
Okay, now, what's it, with map, yeah, right, just a version. Yeah. Oh, no, here it comes. Cancel. Just go back.
Yeah,
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. This one.
Yeah, but she actually works full time. And I was so I worked 2 or 3
Okay, I'll be right back. I'll install it, help him install it. Okay, I will. Okay. So, what's going on? Okay. Okay. Okay, let me see.
Good.
Okay, good. Oh,
That's the same. I'm on the MySql.
So are we locked out of here?
Out of where?
It's like a trap door or something?
Oh, no, you gotta.
Oh,
Yep.
thank you. Are people still taking?
Yeah, true. We could use
Okay, anyone else? Anyone not have math, PHP, MySql, John? Or
The download's happening, but we also.
Okay, you guys should be good. We can get with you individually while we're doing the exercises too. So we are done. So we should have no problems connecting to our MySQL instances because we use MAMP. You will have with other installations, like for those of you who downloaded MySQL Workbench, who downloaded MySQL Pro, you have to connect it to your MySQL database. Did you guys do that yet? Who is not using MAMP and PHP MyAdmin? Not using it? Okay, are you guys connected to your database yet?
I'm gonna assume so.
Workbench and the server.
Okay, you connected. Are they connected to the workbench and the server? Are they like set up?
It should be the same thing. When they install the server, the workbench connects to the local server.
Okay. Okay, so it connects to the local MySql database. So we'll just go over this. You can use either one. It's the kind of thing where we're agnostic, just like with text editors. You can say, well, should I use VS Code? Should I use Sublime Text? And really, like, it's up to you. Different developers do different things. There isn't a right or wrong answer. I'm going to suggest that you guys use MAMP and MyAdmin. That's what I do, but different people like different things. The reason I like MAMP and PHPMyAdmin is it's just up and running. It's really easy to just get started with, and you won't spend a lot of time kind of spinning your wheels trying to get things working.
Wait, so are we gonna learn how to use MAMP right now?
Yeah, so yeah, are we gonna?
Or is there a video that we're?
No, the video you've already watched.
Wait, that was the workbench.
Yeah, so there is a separate one for MAMP. As I said, there are two different things that do the same thing.
Oh, okay.
So I guess the video, they're telling you guys you can use Workbench or you can use SQL Pro. PHPMyAdmin is the third option, which I find to be the easiest, but they all kind of do the same thing. So it's up to you guys to pick which one. No problem. So we are going to go over, though, the instructions on how to. Do you know why this isn't turning on, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, you just remember.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it. So we're going to talk a little bit about connecting to your database. If you have PHPMyAdmin and MAMP set up, you won't have to do this. This is already done for you. I think a lot of you guys who are using the other database admins as well should have done this already. Basically, what you do is you set up your database admin to connect to your database server, if that makes sense to you guys. So you have a database server that sits on your computer. It doesn't have a user interface. It doesn't have anything. All it does is it handles data and requests for data. So then you have an admin tool that you're going to use to look at what's in your database. It could be any one of the three things we talked about. It could be MySql Pro, it could be MySQL Workbench, or it could be PHPMyAdmin. So you're just going to give it a few different pieces of information. You're going to give it the name. This could be anything. This is just for you to remember what it is. If you have more than one database you're connecting to, then you're going to have your connection method. It's going to be over standard TCP IP. That's fine, regular internet protocol. Then you're going to have the host name. Since it's a locally hosted database, this is the IP address for your local computer that you'll use for everything. It's good to know this stuff. 127.0.0.1 is the default address for a local host. IP addresses, by the way, are a series of 4 numbers from 0 to 255, inclusive, in case that's ever on a job interview question. Except for IP. So IP version 4 addresses, like you see here, the 4 numbers separated by dots, it's 4 numbers from 0 to 255. So 256. 8 squared. What is that? 24 squared? 16 squared is 256, I think. Anyway, it's 0 to 256. And then you give it a port number. You guys all remember what a port is, right? It's just a way to route the connections coming in over a single IP address to different pieces of software. For instance, you might have a web server, like a Node.js web server or an Apache web server running on the same web server that's also running your MySQL database. So in order to get around that, we have what are called port numbers. The default port number for MySQL is 3306. The default port for a website or a web server. Anyone know what that is? No, 3000 is for Node. That's what we've been using for Node. Sorry? Where is it? This is a screenshot. I didn't leave anything out.
Is it 80?
Yeah, it's 80 exactly. Good job. Yeah, all right. All right. Okay, and this is all we have to do. Then we can click test connection. In this particular admin, it will test our connection. It will make sure we're using it. Is everyone there? Is anyone not able to do this, not able to test their connection that's using MySQL Workbench? Yeah, Nelson. MAMP. Get MAMP, get on PHPMyAdmin. Because it will restart it will reset the password. If you don't reset your default MySQL password, it will lock you out. Madison had that problem also.
I can enter to PHPMyAdmin, but.
You can't get into it?
Yes.
You can or cannot? Can. Okay. Yeah, just use that then. Okay, so you guys now have an activity. You are going to. Yeah. So so what are you using? Are you using MAMP or are you using MySQL database? Okay, so if you are using MySQL database or MySQL Workbench rather, yeah, you're gonna enter these 4 things. 127.0.1, port 3306. Okay. Yeah, you're good. If you're on MAMP, you're okay. You're already tested because you can see that you have your database here. So I think we're pretty good with this. We are going to press on. I'm wondering, do we even need to?
We have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. 80 is not secure. 80 is for HTTP. 81 is for HTTPS. I think 81. 81 is the default for HTTPS. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
443.
443? Really? So what is 81 then? 81 is usually, okay. Could be 443. I was wrong. Okay, so we're gonna Slack out an activity for you guys. We're gonna do this one in 15 minutes. It should be just as simple as making a new connection to your database. I'm gonna go over the instructions with you in just a sec. Okay, TA, should you please Slack out exercise 1, animals? Sorry, so basically we're Slack out an exercise to you. You're going to open up your SQL admin. If we say SQL Workbench, just replace that for MAMP and PHPMyAdmin if you're using that. Or whatever admin you're using, it doesn't matter, but open up your MySQL admin. Then take the contents of animalsdb.sql that we're slacking out to you, and you're gonna paste it into the SQL section of your Workbench. And then you should see the SQL newly created. So let me.
It's like a instruction for the connection.
Oh, do we have that? Where are those instructions? Okay, so is everyone clear on what you're going to be doing? We sent you some SQL code. This SQL code. Oh.
He sent the instructions to setting up the local connection.
Oh, but we should be good with that. Oh, yeah, we skipped over that one. It's not a high critical one, and they were already done. So it's 01, and activity is in the version of the project that I'm looking at is 01-animalsdb. Yeah, sure.
Says port 3306 is already being used.
You have another process running, so try to shut down your MySQL. Find that. You control all of these your processes before it should become
Okay.
Yeah, do you do like
This is called so it's a fully programmable keyboard. You can program all the different layers. No. This company's called keyboard.
Somebody.
Dang,
Your eyebrows.
Stop, I don't look at no one's
I know.
I just stare.
Well, I just, I thought, yeah, well, I stared
I have to fill in my eyebrows because I've never seen how they look there.
That we're doing. Then go to MySql. Yeah.
So is it trustworthy, like it's service?
Yeah, so you just paste in here to see if there's an SQL code that you're pasting in, so you get an SQL code that is gonna inject data into it. Paste it here, click run, click go. That's all you Okay, yeah, let me know. Just paste it, click go, you should be good. Everybody know how to copy and paste the SQL into your SQL app? And then, oh, are you using that one? Yeah, just paste it. Did that work for you? I don't know why you got that one.
Oh, I created it, yeah. Oh, are you in safe mode?
Yeah.
Okay, so go to edit.
Yeah, you're supposed to paste in, basically slack down an SQL code to add data to it. And then you just paste in.
Oh, that's crazy. And then, no, go to SQL edit.
Did it work?
There it is.
Okay, yeah, copy all of it.
Yeah. So we gotta take it off.
Yeah, just like that, and then click go. Okay, anyone else not clear on how to paste in the SQL code? Did it work for you?
Did you try?
Oh, okay, I see what you're talking Oh, no, it's not created.
This one, this one.
Wait. Yeah, oh yeah, you have to make it.
What did you look at it?
Okay, there you go.
Did I do it right? Did it work for you?
So it should show you.
Well, I did it right here. And then I said, you know what? I should save
We went from 6.
Yeah.
Oh, you opened it. use
all the way to, if it works.
Oh, see, right.
Oh my God, it is jumping. Refresh, refresh.
I try to open this.
And then it's gonna pop up.
Okay. The home section.
Yeah, so I just dragged it to Workbench.
There is where you drop the. Yeah, like,
Oh, are you not using Workbench? Oh, sorry, I was
My reason is exactly.
And then you have to exit.
Let me look this up for you. It should show it to you in your database, but I just don't have that MySql. Do that.
Oh, it was at the top. No, it didn't look. It's just at the top. Click the top, and then just and then it's all at the top.
So when you see that, all right, who needs help? Good, everyone over here good? You guys all see the data? Yeah, good, awesome. John, okay, you guys see the data? Awesome, you can see the data in the database? Yeah, and then you can actually see it if you refresh.
Yeah.
Do you know how to refresh?
So you should be a little bit more.
Oh, did you run the query or no? Oh, okay. So yeah, this is what we
You can run it again.
make sure everybody runs it, they can see the data. So then,
I was like busy working inside of the database. And so she wrote back and I was like.
You see the data in the database, that's what happens. Yeah, just like that, and then.
No, I sent it to my work because I'm actually.
No.
Never?
No. I've never done it myself.
So, yeah, it's here, I like to fly like these. You can see here's all the tables, so to add it all.
Scroll down. Like he says something at the end that's epic.
Okay, everyone, most of you guys should see it. Is that working for you? Oh, you have to refresh it first. Okay, you run it? Okay, click go.
What's the year?
Now, when you go over here.
I've chosen to not let face show now. That's funny when I looked up to the information.
Yeah, so you can see.
It shows like relationship settings and I'm like.
So it added all this
I think they
data
put
for you.
under so I thought that was funny. They pulled like a lot of archetypes, just like barbecue and I don't know the relationship status they just put up.
Yeah, because it's a same
Okay, so everyone can see the data in the database? We ran that SQL code. What it did was it inserted data into our database. Right, guys?
Yes.
Everyone good with that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let us keep moving on then. So, connections versus databases.
Jump a couple of activities. We want to see your Tokayo
What?
to see what we should be doing. Because we should have created a database like on the query line, then create a table, then
Oh, yeah.
do some records, like old school things.
Well, this is just the first activity we're on now.
No, but I think the first one was.
I mean, I'm looking at it now. So the first, no, activity 1.
So you can work on. So we did that, right?
Yeah.
And then we skipped that, right?
Yeah.
So okay, that right here. Connection to the database.
Yeah.
And then creating MySql database.
There's no, can you go up to? So we talked about that. The connection to the database, they're going to use their admin, and then they have a.
Right. Within the schema section, so there's
Yeah, but we're admin and host.
okay. And then this is the dedication section. Like create this database. We see the output, and then creating the table. You know, with all the options.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
So I guess you could review just like the code that was just because that has the same stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, let's take a look at that's what I was going to do next is actually review the SQL code that we sent out.
Just like smell fresh.
You've never been to, oh,
No, I haven't been to any cities. No, I've been to the temple, but I haven't been to those temples. Yeah, the temples where you get concilios from the tree.
yeah, bro.
Ooh, my grandpa used to get them from me.
I used to ride a dog. Mario is too. Mario, right? Are you Dominican too?
Yeah.
We're the very Dominican for the class. That's great. And your last name is French. You know that, right?
Wait, what's your last name? Ricard. Oh yeah, Ricard. Yeah, that's French.
Nobody believes.
Yeah. Well, my last name is Italian. Yeah, because the watch.
I would have just recommended
No more cake for you. It's like I can't control the
I do have a belt and a shirt. Okay, everyone. So I hope that worked well. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about what this SQL actually did. We ran some SQL. We can all see that it injected data into our databases, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about all of these concepts, what they are, what they do, starting with line 2. And you can see they're all nicely commented for us. Incidentally, this is how you make a comment, or one of the ways that you can make a comment in MySQL code. Another way you can make a comment is with a £, like this. So line number 1 and 2, we're just going to say if the database already exists, animals DB, we're going to go ahead and drop it and overwrite it with the data that we're adding, right? Everyone understand how that would work? If there's already a table with this name, we're going to go ahead and delete it because we want to overwrite it with our code. Everyone clear on that? Any questions on this whatsoever? Yeah, if there's already a table there, it deletes it. Yes, Sam.
Are we gonna have to learn how to do this, or is this something we're gonna do in JavaScript instead?
Good question. We're going to be doing both. We're going to be using actual executable SQL code, as well as using a JavaScript ORM, which stands for Object Relational Mapper, which is basically a piece of JavaScript software that writes SQL for us. Question? Over here? Okay, so we're going to be using Sequelize, which writes the SQL code for us, and we're also going to be learning to write it ourselves. This isn't really at the core of what we're learning to do as MERN stack developers, because we will be learning Mongo after this. It's really up to you guys how much you decide to learn SQL. Some people start using SQL, they really like it, they want to write all their own SQL, so it will be optimized and more efficient. Some developers I've worked with will just get in a room and get on the whiteboard and start writing out like how they'll optimize their queries and all kinds of stuff. For you guys as front-end / full stack developers, it won't be that critical to what you're doing, but it might show up on a job interview question sometime. It might show up in something that you're doing sometimes. So it's good to familiarize yourself. What I would like from all of you guys is to at least understand conceptually how this works. The high level, at least be able to, if there's something you don't understand, be able to go on Google and research it, at least at that level of like understanding. Okay, good question. Okay, so can somebody say what line 4 does? We've deleted the database if it exists. Now we're going to, Sam, create, right. Then this next thing says we're going to use, because we can have more than one database per server, right? So this next command use just tells our SQL server that we're going to actually be using this database we just created with the name animals_db. Now, what is our next thing, number 10, doing? Right, because our databases can have more than one table each. In fact, a lot of times they'll have many tables, right? So we're going to create one table called people. And now we're going to define the columns, right? Each of these pieces of information we're going to be storing in our table. So it's going to have these 4 things. It's going to have name, it's going to have has pet, it's going to have pet name, and it's going to have the pet age. Now, when we define our data schema, do you guys all remember this word schema? We've talked about it before in class. A schema is like a blueprint for data, right? So we're going to lay out a blueprint for how we are going to architect our data. So we're going to pick, first, can everyone see this, by the way? Could it be a little bigger? Okay. So we're going to pick the data types. We've talked about data types before, right? You guys understand how there's strings, there's numbers. So in SQL, the way they do data types is a little bit different than in JavaScript, but it still carries over. So it should be familiar to you. So one type of data type we have in MySQL is called a varchar, which means variable characters, right? And then we have this 30. Does anyone guess? Can anyone guess what it could be? The max characters, right? Because we're going to allocate a certain amount of memory per database cell. So it needs to know if there's only going to be 30, a name is not going to be that long, so we'll only allocate so much memory for it, right? Then the next one is haspet. This is a Boolean. We all know what Booleans do, right? They're either true or false. Pretty simple. The pet name is also going to be a varchar. It's going to have a max length of up to 30 characters. And the pet age is going to be an integer, and it can only be 10 characters, although that's a very high age for a pet to live to. 1 million years. So, okay. So now what are we doing down here on line 22, anyone?
Creating a new row.
We're going to create a new row. So we're going to say we have this table called people. We're going to insert into, this is the SQL syntax, to insert into an existing table. We're going to say we're going to insert into our new table we created, people, and we're going to give it the names of the columns that we're inserting here, right? So it's all 4 of our columns, and then we're giving it the values that we're going to insert into each of those columns. We're going to do the same thing again 4 more times to create 4 more records in our database. And then we're going to use this update command to actually send all of the data that we just did to our database, which actually sort of commits it, right? That's where it actually gets written. And then we're going to do some other things. This is what's called, okay, no, I'm sorry, guys, I misspoke. So update is a totally different thing. This is going to take one of the tables that we've already created, or one of the rows that we've already created in our people table, where hasPet equals true and the pet's name is Franklin, or no, where the name is Peter, we're going to update that he has a pet, that the pet's name is Franklin, and the age is 2. Because before, when we set Peter here, we just set false for his has pet, right? So Peter was just a person living all alone, lonely, with no pet. Now he has a pet. His name is Franklin. It's a wonderful 2-year-old cat or dog, hamster.
So you can actually update more than one rows based on whatever you specify in the
Yeah, you can update more than one row at a time. If it would match actually any row where it matches this criteria. So if there are 2 people named Peter, it would update both of them, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and MySQL is not really my strong suit either. I know enough to pretend and that I can find the answers when I want to, and that's been good enough for me thus far. Yeah, actually, when I interviewed for this job, MySQL was the one thing that I didn't do like perfectly on. That was the feedback I got from Josh. Wow, you did everything perfect except for MySQL. So you guys will have to bear with me. Hopefully, this will all make sense to you. And what really is important is that we do the conceptual stuff. So guys, any questions on this so far, what we've covered?
Just a matter of practicing the syntax like we've done with CSS and everything.
Yeah, it's just a matter of practicing the syntax. It isn't really as important even that you memorize this syntax. I would rather you save that space in your brains for some of the other stuff that I'm doing. This I'd like to be kind of like high level. We know we have to insert things into tables. We know we have to update tables. We know we have to delete tables. We know we have to delete.
Yeah, and their homework doesn't highlight. It's in the weeds.
Yeah, but so you get in the weeds, but you don't have to like retain every, you know what I mean? So I would say the retention with this particular week is less important than with other weeks because we won't be using it. Like CSS we use in pretty much every project we do. MySQL will only be in a few projects that we do, and it will probably only be in a few of the projects that you guys do after leaving here, depending on what you do. I mean, I've done several websites with MySQL. I did a lot of full stack development with PHP back in the day, so I had to learn all of this stuff. Sometimes I use an object relational mapper, which would basically write the SQL for me, and I just have to write the code. But this stuff is really not hard. It's really pretty easy when you understand it conceptually. The hardest thing is optimizing queries, which I don't think we'll even get into this class yet.
Does the semicolon at the end make sense?
Yes, semicolon is required. It's not like JavaScript where it'll let you go most of the time with no semicolon to say, oh, that's okay, I'm a forgiving language. SQL is not a forgiving language. It needs the semicolons. Yeah, Adrian.
But I'm watching your PHP Miami that you can create the rows and the tables manually.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, you can use your admin to do that for you. Remember, the admin is a piece of software that does some of the work for you. If you're a super geek, you would just do everything on the command line, right? And just type in the commands in the command line. We're trying to give ourselves some padding while we learn, so you can use the UI. It's there to help you.
So are we also going to discuss order, because lines 36 and 37, like for me, I would think update people where name equals Peter and set these values, rather than update people, set values where name equals Peter.
Order doesn't matter in this case.
It doesn't. Okay.
Yeah, it would work either way, right, Jonathan? Yeah, it would work in this case. It would work either way. The reason they have different orders is for efficiency, because you can structure. In some cases, it would be easier to say where it's this, then do that. So the order is basically dependent on efficiency, which gets more and more important as your queries get more and more. So let's press on then. If there are no more questions, you guys all understand what we're doing. We insert things into our table. We create a table. We insert things into the table. We do it by column here. And then we're going to update one of our new rows that we created as well. We can also do that. So what we've covered here so far is create table, insert into table, which you do by giving it the names of the columns and then the values that you want to insert into each column. And then the third thing that we learn to do is update a table where we find a column that already exists by some value that's in it. In this case, we're going to find it by the name, and then we're going to set a bunch of values in it for the columns. Is everyone getting this? Okay, great. We're going to move on to our next exercise. TAs, could you slack out exercise 2, please? Okay, so for table favorite foods, we're going to create a column. So first you'll create a new table, I guess, called favorite foods, right? Is that how it works?
Table. No, they already have a table.
Favorite foods? I thought it was animals. No, they just made animals. Favorite foods.
Right. Oh, we're doing favorite foods now.
Yeah, so if you don't have a favorite foods table, make one. If you did the video, then you're good. So you're going to create a column with a name food that can take a string up to 50 characters, the name of any food under 50 characters. And then it's going to have a score. So you might have like spaghetti that gets a 25. I guess it's the score 1 to 10. So spaghetti is like an 8. Then you're going to create another table called favorite songs. You're going to create a column called songs, which can be up to 100 characters long and cannot be null. So you'll have to look up how to do that. Create the column artist, which can take in a 50-character string, but it can be null. And then create the column score, which can take an integer. So let me show you guys how to not make something null. You just basically put required is true, not null. Yeah, so that's it. Make sense to everyone? Any questions? Sorry, let me go back to that. Okay, so one other thing that we haven't talked about yet is primary keys, right? So let's talk for a second about primary keys before we get started. So I showed you guys how you'll have unique identifiers for each row, right, which we use to relate them to other tables. And we do this by setting this ID to the primary key. So this ID will be the primary key to get each table row out of our tables. Make sense to you guys? Madison? Happy? So let me show you how to do this in SQL code. I think it's just primary key. So sometimes we just use our Google Foo and look up the answers. Oh, this was the shooting that I was reading about on okay, so I'm gonna look up MySql primary key. MySql primary key constraint. So you'll just do this. You'll create an ID column. It'll be not null. And then at the bottom, you'll use this primary key ID. So to show you guys what this would look like in our first example, we would basically just put this down here. And then if this is assuming that we have a column called ID. ID, and it is an int 10, let's say, and cannot be null.
What does INT stand for?
Integer.
Integer. So how come it's spelled out in other areas? Like page 8?
No, actually it's other languages that mostly use INT. You can use integer.
Oh, okay.
I think actually either way works in MySQL, but I usually do it int, but you can use integer. I would actually recommend that you guys use integer. It's a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's X.
So we're supposed to copy what they sent us in Slack.
Let me look at what they sent you guys in
Yeah,
Slack.
there's some syntax error.
You have to add.
You have to add stuff. So this is like the bare bones versions, like we've been sending out to you guys for the JavaScript code that have comments, but they tell you guys what you need to fill in. So you'll need to go through and fill in some stuff with what they slacked out and then run it.
So a string doesn't.
You guys are so polite.
We finish it in subline first
And then run it, yeah.
So if it's a string, it doesn't always have to have a max amount of characters. Doesn't require us to have a max amount.
Yeah, but it's good to put that there because it'll save you memory. But it probably will work without it. I've never even tried to do it without it because I always thought it would work better. Oh, yeah.
Oh. No, because you have to, that's the table. Not the database. Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right, exactly, yes, that's the table. Yeah, sorry. Because you're already in the database. Right.
Sorry.
Was it? Oh.
Yeah. No, we're asking the wrong question.
Hey, how much?
I know we haven't touched that. We're gonna be part of it to touch the SL. So, okay, right.
Okay, you guys should have 1 more minute to complete this. How are we doing? Anyone not gonna complete 1 minute? Yeah, you good?
I think I'm good. I don't know what's going on. What's going on with not connected?
Oh, you're not connected. Okay, so you got it.
I know, but I am connected.
Your database is on, but your admin is not connected to your database. So it worked for you the first time, right?
Yeah, it was working.
Okay, so set up preferences. Store connections. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm just literally trying to make a default value here.
Yeah, did you edit in Sublime Text?
No,
Sometimes it's easier to edit in Sublime Text.
Okay, I do that.
Yeah. You need better like text highlighting, I need better, you know, coloring in with the text.
In this case, for the assignment,
And that way you'll
I
have
just
to.
created a different column, so once you use it, your computer says create a different column. If I use this, I'll create a column like this.
No, is it for the ID? You definitely use integer for the ID. So it's gonna be like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it'll never be a decimal.
No, it's lo mismo. They should
No,
have
but for it to be a primary key, I think it has to be an integer. Yeah. Or maybe it's, I don't know, it can be a decimal.
You probably can, but you know.
Yeah,
Always,
yeah.
it's always a
It's
bit
always
there.
an integer.
So then score.
I don't think you have to auto increment it. Yeah. Alright, we got that.
Yeah, you got it, you got it. Very good.
Just a quick thing, it makes it already, but before you had these errors.
Okay, the only piece I'm missing is that last one, bottom primary key.
Yeah.
Oh.
It doesn't need to, cannot be null. I just put default false.
That's the thing with some.
Yeah, put it in the admin.
Like, if people play on the other.
So everyone, but this is the admin is try to actually run it when you're done with writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So usually do it.
Huh?
Thank you.
I'm gonna work right now, so okay, so I got up there.
Okay, so remember how I showed you each of these rows has a number on it, like 1, 2, 3, so that way you can link the tables together and things like that. So this primary key is a word. So 1, it has a new number.
That's all we should have.
And then if you want a new record, for example, or something, whatever, then we'll add 2. Then if you repeat that, it goes on to the next one. So it's just a few way of handling a way to get the record and ID so that you can go back and get it. Right? There might be
Oh, yeah, you can always open it.
Easily accessible. So it gives each of them a.
No, I got an error on line 7, just.
Well, you can look it up like anyone and say, yeah, it's correct. So like, here's what, you know what I mean? It's easier if you have just a name.
Make a screen problem called some.
Well, no, you do it with the program, you're gonna do it with, so the user, the end user won't, this is for your computer. Yeah, but it won't really work that way, because you'll look up, the way it will work is you'll look up the person, you'll get the ID, and then you store. So you the program, you just write it yourself, so it just gives you yeah, you'll see, as over, it's really not that.
You can also like figure out.
Check it out. How's it going? Were you able to check?
Yes.
Running into it's, I looked it up, but it's because, it just says that this is MySql at line 7, which is use favorite DB.
Yeah.
Sorry. Doesn't understand it's simple. But it's also saying export.
Oh, because you created it, and you shouldn't have to create it. It's already there. Yeah, it's already there.
I don't know how you got it.
Oh, wait, how do you?
Or
Yeah, it says like, at line 7,
quick question. It shows up, show your table again. Scroll down. So this shows them with all three locations in the same area. Mine are 3 different tables.
Even this is gonna go right here.
Okay, then I can get the same.
That's good.
With Madison, you guys just take the 2 missing commas, you can go see like everything else is. Yeah, well, one is one.
Oh, I see, so you wanna create,
yeah.
primary key.
So try that.
That's why.
No, it has all of them except for the last. It's just
Oh, yeah.
Okay, where?
Next to which one?
The location,
Primary space key.
No, I said, okay.
It's not primary.
Integer ID, not no.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. No, I don't think so, because it just asked for it with the.
The thing being, it's not, we have to.
Okay, guys, who is running the house? Who's not that good?
Oh, no, I'm good, sorry.
No, saying you're running some problems? Okay, who else hasn't gotten to work? Did you guys get to work? Okay. You haven't done it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I'm gonna make it.
Oh, so it's the same thing. First, start with the name of the file. And then you specify the type. And data type. Integer, start word,
Actually, no.
Sure, you don't have to put a grid. So just remove the parentheses. You're good? That works. So you don't need to, because you're not. So when you don't put the number, it's unlimited. You can type in 1,000 numbers.
Yeah, you're gonna
Here you're putting a limit, you're saying only 30 of these.
I just wanna put an art.
Okay. Right, so we're going to, run it.
Yeah.
There's all there. Now, perfect. Now we're gonna add 2 more things. Great. So we're gonna have to make this. It can't be no, and it has to auto. So these words, I was telling you, but it can't be no. So when you update this data, you can make this. You can add data underneath. I mean, so you have an Excel table underneath the top. You have a data. When you add rows, and then it might be last thing, like the next person. But I would want to say not know. You're saying I will add. I would have IDs. When you add a new
all right, guys, who's not done?
Yeah, it uses auto.
You got to work?
Yeah.
No, it's auto space. Yeah, you'll see.
I believe that.
Okay, good. All right, cool. Everyone done? How did you guys like that? Let's switch gears. Can you do it still working?
Nice.
Were you able to get it fixed? Okay, we're gonna take a few minutes to start the whole change. We're going to get started now, everyone. Okay, so here's what, John, are you good? Is John good? What's going on? Okay, all right. We're going to bring that to a close now. We're going to do laptops down. We're all going to talk about this blindly with no computers, no devices in front of us, no screens that we always stare at. We're going to, Mario, are you good? You got everything figured out? Okay, so let's talk about what we just learned, everyone. What did we do in plain English? No, I'm going to even turn this.
Created tables.
We created tables. We created tables. We created columns for our tables. Then we created rows for our tables, right? Did we do anything else? We created foreign keys. So, or we created primary keys, rather. So let's go back to our example here and talk a little bit more about primary keys, why we need them. So a primary key is typically an integer. So say I want to add another person here. Add Ricard?
R-I-C-A-R-T.
A-R-T, yeah, silent T, French. So you see he's ID number 2. Now let's see what happens when I delete me. I want to be removed from the database. I'm no longer here. Mario still stays at 2, right? Because it's a unique identifier. It might be saved. So this is important. So where have we seen this before? Have you guys ever come to a web page, like a WordPress page, and it says something like this? It'll say like index.html. And then after that, there's some URL parameters. It'll be like a question mark, and then it's article ID equals like a long number. Have you guys seen that before? Yeah, equals something. So what it's doing here is it looks up this article in the database, right? Our web server gets this, and then it goes and looks for article ID number 1, 2, 3, 4, and it brings back the article record with that ID. And then in that database, there'll be a column for what? Article body, a column for headline. Do you guys understand how that works? Any questions on this? Questions, Siobhan? Okay, so it is 8:06. Any questions, guys? Questions? Yeah.
Primary IDs, you translate that to something unique, like a username for a web page or a game or something like that?
Yeah, but you would probably, what a lot of times they'll do is they'll take the user ID and then they'll encrypt it. Or they'll use like a SHA-256 algorithm or something to make it into like a bunch of numbers and letters. So that way you can't hack it. That way you can't just change it. You can say, I'm user number 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what user number 1, 2, 3, 5 has or something, right? So you don't want people to be able to do that. So that's why typically when you do stuff like that, you'll encrypt the user ID. Any other questions? Good question.
So the one that's shown on the URL, for example, would be encrypted?
Sometimes for like WordPress sites, they're really not. So you could just change this to article 1, 2, 3, 5, and it would just get you the next article. Because the articles are pretty much public anyway, so they don't really need to be protected like that. Good question. Any other questions? How do you guys feel about this so far? I mean, it's okay, right? You understand what we're doing. We're making tables. They're basically like spreadsheets. We put data in them. We do it with this SQL query syntax, which is kind of. There's no. This is all there is to it.
Right? I feel like something's coming.
I mean, we're gonna get into talking about relational tables. Like I might want to link this to like businesses. That's the next thing that's coming. Is we're gonna relate the tables to each other. Yeah.
Honestly, Jeff,
Yeah.
that's most complicated.
Yeah.
How do I link my JavaScript to the database? Just the way that I use Bootstrap.
Okay, hold on, guys. I'm trying to hear Peter's question.
How do I link my JavaScript to the database?
Okay, so we're gonna get into talking about that probably in our next class. The way we do that, we can only do it from the server side through Node.js. And the way we do it is through packages, just like everything else we do in Node, we install a package. So we're gonna look up, there's gonna be an npm package for SQL. This is what is known as a database driver. Languages don't usually have database support built into them. They'll have what are called database drivers, which are the drivers that connect, in this case, Node.js to our MySQL database, or it could connect PHP to the MySQL database. So we're gonna learn how to do that. Basically, we do it with something called a database driver that we're going to learn about. Yeah. So these are the two big things that you guys are going to still have to learn about now that we've learned about tables, how to create, write, update. We haven't learned delete yet, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Then we're going to start talking about relationships between records and different tables, and we're going to start talking about integrating it into our Node.js applications. And then we'll start talking about SQLize, which writes the SQL for us, which is not really a sucker punch. That's more of like a helping. Okay, back in 20 minutes, 8:30.
My thing is that
Oh my God, that's on my phone. I can sort of. I'll give you a word.
Let's go, let's start with.
no, because in my mind, I'm thinking Wi-Fi extended. That's how Wi-Fi extended.
So Phil, we haven't gotten into like making node applications react to, well, I mean, we haven't seen that. Because what we've done with node is reactive to a command.
To the command line, yeah. We're going to learn something called Express, which does the web server part of it too. So yeah, we haven't gotten to that yet. We'll get to it later, I think in 2 weeks. Hold on, I can tell you. Yeah, it's next week. We'll learn about this.
Click on the.
I just got back.
Website, like GitHub, or Google.com. I think that's what I put. That's it, right? Yeah, it's like reach and create. Third page.
Open up a new tab for your Twitter page when you have it open. I'm trying to see his profile and a phone number. Not right. Yeah. So it's not working. Under mobile. You look on your left. Up there. Verification code, I guess.
Oh, beginning servicing, so the goals.
Yep. So it's gonna be. Yeah, you said that actually.
No,
but it's actually, but I
so we
think
can
it's
do it
water.
initially,
I guess.
Yeah.
Just like staring at that face like. I'm like, I'm just gonna look like this. Where's the girl?
Long story short, the report still managed, but we physically have to do it. But yeah, it's the only thing that has, yeah, you don't have. Okay. So that's less than you about it. That gives a lot.
Oh, this one is.
Yes, sir.
That's great. That's what
No, wait, too.
No, wait, no, I said. Oh, this is a settings, like settings page.
Okay, so I need to set up a Twitter account.
Yeah. And then you go to the account and yeah.
Free.
You can go and explore.
So not only am I getting a strong, although they could just do that and get a strong license, but with this, so what am I writing? So the essential to
You don't have to do any of that. I'll go back and try.
Yeah, but they all love the same thing.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate the mention.
Yes. We won't need that for this class though. But it is good to learn this stuff. I tried to learn it. Try again. To see a little. Oh, baby. Description is too short. Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah. I'll go this Thursday or next class. Yeah. Yeah. I'll come. Yeah. I'll come. Are you going, Jonathan?
The only guy that.
Do it.
Jonathan, are you coming?
I am busy.
No, what?
Thursday. Tuesday, Thursday,
Tuesday, Thursday.
You work Thursday? You work Thursday? Was that it?
Yeah.
Like you work Thursday? That was your.
I work every day.
Yeah, no, we're gonna go after.
And then Tuesday, Thursday, I don't see that. Saturday, I'm leaving class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you got unlimited. Okay. Yeah, I'll come. Oh, it is. Where is it?
It's on A3
Oh, okay. Northwest or southwest? Southwest. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty close to me.
Yeah.
Baby. Plan application sale. Description's too short. I thought you put a bigger description. Okay, I do our own feeling.
I don't know. HTTP. Go ahead. I see other people like. Where?
Oh, yeah.
No, there is the McDonald's. Aparte de
Go to keys and access.
Yeah, I know.
This is a tutor, right? Copy that. Go to your sublime that you have open. Click on .env. Better consumer key. You replace that.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
No. After that. Yeah, because that's an it.
So.
Done. Let's do the next one. Let's see.
It doesn't have a D in it for it, could be just.
Just like that.
Just passing.
So now go back and get the seat.
We didn't create any rules. It just covers.
By any chance, is there one that is two? Hold on, I'm trying to.
Yeah, but you have to find the access code.
Access to. That's the same one.
Here,
One back
Yep, there they are.
Which one? The two?
The whole thing, the whole list. So basically, you do this once and you're good. Yeah, and then you save it, that's it, that's your key, that's your code.
Anything I do with
If you get, if you're using it for, yeah, correct. Correct. So now we're
I
gonna.
mean, I can play with them, yeah, kind of part of last. This
Now.
right?
Yeah. You still have to do it.
So the thing is that I move my computer into my computer.
Yeah, you'll get all that.
But that means that it's not directly
Saved
connected to the router.
Good. All right, let's go to the keys.js, take a look at the code.
Yeah. That, basically.
It's going to the dot. Right there.
I just send them over the port there. So I could, essentially, it would be.
Also, this is the
plugging
short
it
code
directly to
for
the router.
that, so it's gonna be.
This is
I was just
JavaScript
curious, I
file.
was wondering. Basically, the
That's-
phone number
that's
along the
the
same line, but have support.
You
I can both program it, but I don't see
The
there.
old one sounds like the code, also, so this is what, yes.
Alright.
Got you.
So, now, let's, we have to create a j.js file, start doing the programming job.
Yeah, again, I don't know if I can happen back.
What?
No, you have to create a file to start doing the job.
Yeah.
There's also a branch.
There's a heavier one, which is short, but it's
That doesn't need to be okay. But that's ridiculous.
Okay, how do you get it?
Get that in this.
Okay.
You have to have, you have to.
Wait, there's one that's.
You have to create a company.
Yeah, right.
Create,
Yeah.
JS from?
But it is Amazon too.
I'd rather just buy this and live with just like here. Because again, it's not like I'm running it.
I agree.
New file. And then file save as.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even afraid of it. I was like, one time, but it's great, let me drop this to land. I'm not even.
When you see it, so how it look like?
Okay.
It's like, if I measured it, I would.
Instructions. And instructions, they said you had to do this.
Thing is, I'm still very.
So go ahead and copy that. And paste it. We created that key, right? In order for us to get the exact keys that we need, we created this file.
I don't know if it would send me to the secret file.
So, it's really JavaScript. So you guys remember the syntax?
And these-
Acquiring JavaScript.
I can't even.
So
Yeah, I'm just thinking, this is being involved. But I would do.
Right. Now we're gonna sign it for various.
I don't know. It's a fire monitor. Okay. So basically, I thought we did the same thing as the other space key, right? Conductor. Yeah.
Do you guys need another extension quickly? I think we're out of here.
But there's a due date. What's the problem?
Worst case scenario, but yes, wait, I can.
What is it? What is it? What is it? What's it? Because
Technically, because it's put on by 9, it's.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean,
Right now, I have the 20. You didn't want to get one of the video games.
because that's what they said, that was from the.
Yeah.
Now,
Right now, I have 2.
you tell us before I keep that this, you also have to put the private password.
Yeah.
This is sitting right here.
There's a place called the,
So you put it forward slash.
they even have where's the clock?
Yeah, okay.
It's so hard like that.
Yes, this is the other, that's really good. And there's one in I think there was.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Those are enthusiastic questions. I think we can do better than that, okay?
Bye, Siobhan.
You're welcome.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Let's get a 1 to 5 on your break. Who knows your Cinco being the highest.
Hey, real quick, whoever, take it home, somebody.
Yeah, somebody be in charge of the cake, take it home. Well, yeah, we'll make sure we take it home. Wait, can I have this one? Okay, everyone. So we're back. We're actually doing really, really well in this class. We've covered a lot. You guys seem to be wrapping your heads around it nicely. You understand what we're using the unique identifiers for, right? Everyone. We covered unique identifiers. Everyone. Unique identifiers, primary key, same thing. Unique identifier, primary key is a type of unique identifier. Yes, Martha.
If I have an ID on a table, but it doesn't say primary key, but I can have 2 tables with an ID.
Yes. So the reason that we use primary key is that it's accelerated in SQL. Because we've had these problems of trying to select rows for so long, they've made the databases hardware accelerated. So if you set a column to be the primary key, it will make the lookups faster, and that's why we do it that way. They organize the internals of the database so that it gets keyed on one column, which makes it index more quickly, which makes the queries quicker, which is very important. Everything in SQL is about speed. Because when you think about it, that's the main thing that it takes for a web page to load, for the query to actually come back and give you a data is a big chunk of the time that it takes for a web page to load or for another type of technology that uses a database to load. So they will lose customers. Companies like Amazon have done research that found that even like a fraction of a second, like 500 milliseconds longer on a database query can make them lose like a lot of money when you add it all up over millions and millions of users. So that's why you need your queries to be optimized as quickly as possible. So using one row that has a primary key just makes the lookup faster. You could not set it as a primary key and still look up on that row and still make your database work, but it just won't be as fast. It won't be optimized. So that's why we do it that way. Any other questions? Okay, so what we've covered so far, we covered primary keys, how they work, right? We auto increment them. They keep getting added. When one gets deleted, it just gets deleted, and then we keep incrementing. We use the primary keys to look up things quickly. That was a great question, Martha. Thank you for asking that. That's why we set a row as a primary key. It's because we can look it up more quickly because the way the database is designed, it's accelerated on the primary key. So then we have relationships between databases. We're going to learn more about that later. It says in the instructions that you guys, if you get done quickly, you're encouraged to learn about joins, how they work. Joins are basically just a way of linking these two things together. So say I know my customer ID for both of these is 1. You could do a join on these, which will get me the customer lookup and all of the projects that are associated with that customer, right? So say I'm building a website that shows me what all my customers are and then what projects each customer has. This would be a quick way to look up a customer and then show all the projects that they have. Does that kind of make sense to everyone? No? Yes? Yes. Yes. Okay, yes, I like that answer better. Let me explain it though. But basically, we need to know, so we'd have like thousands of projects here. We have maybe thousands of customers, so we need to know which projects correspond to which customers. So here in this table, we would have one row that has an ID of a row in this table. So that way we know that these rows are linked to these rows in this table. Each of these projects is linked to this customer. And if this doesn't start making sense now, hopefully it will. But basically that's what a join does, is it gets all of the data from this one row, and then it gets the matching data from this row that has the foreign key that matches this primary key. Yes?
Does it also correspond with the row they're in? For example, if it's on the first row on the other chart on the other table, does that have to be on the first row for the
No, it's just an ID. It doesn't directly correspond with the row. Like when we add them, they get auto incremented, so it goes one after the other. It'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. But sometimes we'll delete things. So that's when a lot of times things will get deleted, so they don't always go in order, but we still have the unique identifier. Okay, so our next exercise, what you guys will be doing is using the code that we slacked out in the first exercise here, and you're just going to add data, because right now you created a database, right? And you created a bunch of tables, right? And then what else have you created? You created columns for each of the tables, right? But are there any rows right now in the data? So that means you have no data right now, right? Right? Right, everyone? Right? Right. Okay, so this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be using this style of SQL syntax to insert data into each of the tables you created. TAs, we don't have this exercise, right? It just says have them insert data into the tables, but it doesn't say. What is it? Number, yeah, but where's the code for it? Where's the activity?
whatever they want to.
Yeah, so use this code that I just showed you guys as a base and just add whatever you want to add. Makes sense? So you have your people. What else they create? People, animals. For each of the 3 tables you guys just created, let's go back to our last exercise so we can see. So for each of the 3 tables that we just created in our last favorite DB with no data, so here's what you guys should have done in your last exercise, right? You made a favorite songs table, which has all of these things. You have a favorite movies table. You have a favorite foods table. And so now you're just going to go through and you're going to use this insert code that I showed you guys to insert things into each one of these 3 tables that you created. For instance, you're going to be adding some favorite foods. So the food takes 2 things, the name of the food and the score. So it could be our cake that we just had. That gets, I don't know, I didn't eat any. That gets a 10. Solid 10. So you're going to have halfway through full stack web development bootcamp cake as the name. It's less than 50 characters. And then 10 as the thing. So then you'll do the same thing with favorite songs. You'll put the name of the song, the artist, and then the score from 1 to 10. Same thing for favorite movies. Movies, get the name of the movie 5 times. I don't know what the 5 times thing is. Is that, have you seen the movie 5 times? I guess. Yeah, so you're going to put the name of a movie. Have you seen it 5 times or not? And then what score does it get? Okay, everyone clear on this? And here's, use the first thing we sent out as the example for how to do that. So it's going to be this guy right here. Okay. So you'll do insert into favorite movies, the name of the movie, etc. And let's see how long you guys get to work on this. Shouldn't need long. 10 minutes.
Oh, so we should probably use what we were working on before.
Yeah.
What was slacked out. Cool. All right. That's an example.
Wait, what did we just slack out?
It's just a.
Oh, yeah, that's just an example, but it's for a different table. So I can help you guys code what you'll need. Like,
No, I'm saying like they slacked out.
yeah, that's just to use that like loosely kind of as an example. And then just change it to match the new tables and stuff that we created. So here's what we'll do. We have 3 tables. We are going to get back. Oh no, it wasn't this one. It was this one. So okay, so favorite foods, you got a food and then an integer. Food and then score. And then 4. Favorite.
You have to do a different insert into.
For each table, yeah.
The president, you just copy it. So you have to do a different one for each row.
No, you can do more. You could do like, I'd have to look up how to do that, but I think it would just be, yeah, let me look that up. I think it was almost in the other example. But Google is always your best friend. So you could just look up MySql, how to insert multiple rows. That was a good question, actually. Yeah, you just do multiple values. So you do insert into and then multiple values. So let me show you guys. It would just be values this and then come down to another line. I don't think you even need the comma. As I yeah, just separated by commas. You're right. So just like that. What other food have we had? We had bagels. What would you guys give the bagels that we had on our Saturday class for the presentations? 10? Okay. Yeah, you don't remember presentations? Oh, okay. No, I couldn't eat them. Okay. So then, favorite movies. Yeah, favorite movies. For the auto-complete, you don't have to write it at all. It does it automatically for you. Yeah.
You have the auto increase.
If you have the auto increment, it does it automatically. It's such a primary key and it's auto. Was that your question? So favorite songs, favorite movies. Okay, favorite movies gets movie Varka. It's a movie I've seen more than 5 times. Schindler's List is a good movie. Well, it is, but there's a lot to it. It's a very substantive movie.
I love how the only color is the color red of the girls. I don't remember where it's gray.
Yeah, it's a good dress.
Yeah, because I think you should, because you're so weird. She said a relaxing day.
I don't think I've ever even seen Rosemary's Baby. Is it? What's it about?
It's about Rosemary's Baby. I'm sorry, I had to give you that.
Rosemary's Baby. Oh, Roman Polanski. Huh. Okay, I'm gonna have to watch this now, Lauren.
You are so
It's all connected to the same, so these are
Well, all these connections are to sort of one server. Right, this one server can have multiple databases. Right now, you're connecting to one database. Okay, so no matter what tab you're on, you're always communicating with that one database. So you can have one tab here for this, and top of that, but it's all communicating with that same thing. Right, or you can drop the table.
Wait, Jackie, what are you?
I wouldn't do that.
No,
So you can drop disable. So she already had a table called favorite foods and stuff, but she wants to run this activity, but it doesn't run because it's there. So I'm dropping it.
Jackie, you already created it. Now we're modifying it.
I didn't realize that we could do multiple tables, so that's my bad.
Yeah, so you got it. So what's wrong with
So John, just drop the table and then we could, Thank you.
Okay, guys, we should be just about done with that. Is everybody almost complete? Anybody lost? Anybody? All right. Pedro?
Yeah, I think I have an extra comment somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, guys, let's bring this to a close. Yeah, so you have two things.
Amazon Alexa skills. Start building Amazon.
I guess that's watch later.
Like probably doing that is getting an Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and doing everything, plugging a microphone.
Plug the microphone
And everything with Python.
There's no such thing as Raspberry Pi with like JavaScript. It's got Python.
Most of the libraries are in Python. It's meant to be done with Python.
Ooh. So with food, we just have to put this name, change this name to.
You know the little stick.
Okay, everyone, let's press on here. Hopefully that worked for everyone. Is anyone else lost? Not working? Raise your hand if you weren't able to complete this activity. So all of you guys are able to write the SQL code. Okay, Gretel, you got it? No? You're not finished? You couldn't get data into the database?
Yeah.
You did, right? Okay. Adrian? It's working, so you guys getting an error? Okay, so this was our last activity. Now we're just gonna get it in, right? So we made the tables already, now we're supposed to create the table, data in. Did you guys get it?
Yes.
Good.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's just that. So you should just have it right there. Okay, we're gonna take another 3 minutes for this. Pedro, did you get yours? Yeah, just this part, because this part creates a table. You already did that part, so you just want the part to just put in the data. Yeah, SQL. Yeah. Yeah, because you already did it.
No, that trilogy. No,
You have too many things.
Yes, thank you. Little Greenspan.
Yes, it does.
Harry Potter.
Yeah, put them on. Put them on. Yeah, that's the best way to. I mean,
Yes.
I like insanity.
Yeah. Oh.
The second one.
Okay, guys, I want this to wind down. Mario, you good? Fabian, did you get it to work?
Hey, okay, I think we still had my.
Yeah,
my
so
MySpace
that
page,
the
like,
stuff
listed out all my
here.
favorite
People.
But that's a good way to keep track of what I actually.
So this one, I was talking about that last one. That's pretty good. The movie is the food. Yeah, but it's good.
Makes no sense.
No, but what I.
Yeah, you can put an example.
So. Yeah, so did you see it? I didn't finish it. No, you don't. You don't get it. It was so like it got to the best of my anxiety that it finished. And we just put it out. Yeah, I'm like,
So the nothing to be here, like finding something.
So what I mean is that you first show
and then you don't really know what that is. No, but I didn't finish it.
I know what it is.
Oh my god.
I know. And
I have anxiety, so. Actually, I
Okay, where's the? It wasn't flat. Yeah, next time. Alright, I'm gonna go with you after that. Okay, yeah. Not working, so.
Once I already.
Okay, guys, we're gonna get back to learning Fabian and Pedro. I'm gonna get with you guys individually. We'll get you guys set up. I promise. So guys, how's it going? How was that activity? Good? You guys all got data into your databases besides Fabian and Pedro? Everyone, you got it, Emil? Okay, awesome. Awesome sauce. Yes, one of my faves. So, we are now going to move on to, so we've already covered a lot of the things in this class. We just kind of sailed through. You guys understand unique IDs now, right? We've talked about them. We understand why they're important. Do we need to cover that again, or are we good? Okay. Okay. Are you sure? We could talk about them more. They get auto-incremented. Okay. So, did anyone take a look at the article I sent out on Rosemary's Baby? No. Did anyone take a look at the article I sent out on relational algebra?
Yeah, it was confusing.
I had to take this class. It is very confusing. You guys won't have to do this, luckily. They have database admins to do this. This isn't a database administration class. So we won't get into the hardcore stuff where you have pi to the 8 to the 1. But if you guys ever do want to learn about like data science stuff, which is a up and coming field, we have another whole class on data science where you probably learn more. SQL, you can learn about how to do dumb relational algebra stuff. It isn't really as hard as it seems. Yes, this is into the weeds. Another interesting thing is to look at query explainers in your, for those of you who are using the more advanced SQL admins like MySql, what is it called? Workbench? Yeah, Workbench. You have a feature called Query Explainer, which visually maps out for you how your query actually works from one thing to another. So that's a pretty good thing to look at for optimizing your queries. What we will be moving into now then is a activity that has to do with programming languages. Yeah. So what we're going to be doing is we have programming DB. Instructions. We're going to make a whole new database now called programming DB and then switch into it for this activity. Do we remember how to switch into a database? Use programming DB. We're going to create a table called programming languages, which includes a primary key named ID, which will automatically increment. We remember how to do that, right? We remember why it's important to do this. So we'll have a unique identifier we can use to select columns out of our table and rows, rather. So we're going to have, each row is going to have a string called languages, and then there'll be a numeric column called rating. So I guess JavaScript gets a 10. Etc. So we're going to insert data into the database the same way as we've been doing before. A bonus, if you finish early, study up on how to add columns to a table and then create a Boolean column called mastered, which has a default value of true. So add columns. We've talked about how to add rows to a table, right? But what if I have my table here with my first name, last name, and phone number, and I want to add address onto this too? Is there a way to do that, do you guys think? Or do we make a whole new table? Delete all this stuff in it? What? Alter table. Exactly. Thank you, Nelson. There's another SQL command called alter that we can use to alter the table and add new rows. So if you got done early, you can look into how to do that, how to use alter. Also, if you get done early, you can look into how to start using joins to join together two different tables. Yeah.
Can we change a property of a specific field? For example, let's say I don't want a bar card to have like 10 characters. I have now, I want now it has 20. Can I do that?
Wait, say that again?
For example, I have a field that I set up a bar card for 10 characters.
Yeah,
alter.
20. Alter can do that.
It works.
Okay, so for the two of you who didn't finish, I'm going to come around to you guys and help get you set up. CA, did we Slack this out? Okay. Awesome. Any questions before we get started?
Yeah, but.
Or can one of you guys help out, Pedro?
I got it.
Oh, you got it? Okay. Okay, so. Give me a second. I don't know, what were you doing? Go to your slide.
Oh, this one. Yeah, I did it.
Okay.
I changed it, right? I don't know where.
Let's see, so it said it added, you got the check marks, it said it added all the tables, you added a table for, movies, favorite movies, all that stuff. and so on. Okay, can I see your? Okay. Okay, so are you using SQL Workbench or are you using, you've been using SQL Workbench the whole time, right? So you should just keep everything open, so favorite movies. Where are the favorite?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm not there yet. I'm on reading.
Yeah. Favorite songs.
Julian, Cognas, or Claude. True. Okay, so before. Okay, yeah.
Where's your outer go? Where's your outer go? That's true. I was missing that. That's where both right and left are called red. I feel so bad.
So there's no code in here. It's like you were running things without reading the code. So you put all this in.
So you've done it.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yep.
So I'm trying to figure out what happened. You said you did the last activity where we did favorite, who's favorite movie, favorite song. But I'm not seeing that when I look through the history of the commands you ran. I just see it looks like you ran it without actually having filled in the code. It looks like just the comments down.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh, that's so annoying. No, I'm looking at it.
So in animals DB, in animals DB, you have tables, people. That's the only table. So I don't understand where did those other people?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. How do I clear this stuff? I guess. Just to keep track of what you're doing when you're using SQL. So I'll just send you the completed exercise so you can run that. And then we'll go from there.
Sorry.
And the true and a euro is named the values are like defined, right? So by default, that has to be true.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's.
Well, it worked for the other one, that's, yeah, it worked here.
Oh, perfect, okay.
As long as it's just the other one. All right, just check if it was broken up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Sorry.
So I sent you some code. If you take that copy and paste it
Okay, so.
So you go back to your thing, paste that in there, and then you like that instruction. That'll create
Your language.
No, I just sent you there. Oh, there's a comma at the end.
So set the key also.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, see how it's random, it's just because you can't hear the. Yeah.
If I close this one, but.
Yeah. The one where you actually did it? Because we didn't have the table, so when we did it, you have those tables there, so you can add the tables. Or the tables weren't there, so you couldn't add the tables. You need to have the tables before you can add it. So try it again when you get.
Oh, I
You got that other
default
code
true.
you just ran?
Default true. That's what we
So
did.
master.
Okay, so let's.
That's what I'm saying, I don't know.
Yeah. The way they wrote it,
So,
they wanted to
you
do
just gotta, it's easier if you keep all of the code in Sublime Text and then you paste it in here when you're done. So you'll edit it from now on in Sublime Text and then paste it. Which will work. This is supposed to give you like a template.
There were 3 tabs open.
Yeah.
We
It's just these things. No, it's the same thing. That's it. No, yeah, those are two comments going together. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, like,
Here's the code that you ran.
they, because there's no way you type that and you don't think you're.
I don't know why I have these 2 tabs open. This is kind of, this is why I'm recommending that you guys use PHP my actual file.
I'm waiting to pass this car.
So now you can see that we can recruit. We have data. Here are all of the columns.
Oh, that's gonna be 4 values.
Score.
I love them. It's like they're saying, here, this is.
I don't know how to see the data though. See, so that just shows you all the data. Thing, and you do that by clicking on this.
Oh.
I'm gonna take
No, yeah, no language or SQL.
It's just showing the one.
So next time, correct?
The way that works, when you query it, it queries everything. Now it's gonna show everything. So on the table, there's nothing.
Like just when you're feeling comfortable with something, you slap them on the ground.
Oh, okay, so literally, right, so this is the ball. Saying basically.
So this should work now.
Yeah, and then the bonus that was.
Just make sure, because like these have to match these, so you put the name of the first column and then that.
But this is written for SQL, not for essentially, right?
Right, this is sequence.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So why don't you use? Yeah, that's the other. This is just.
Something here. When I created the table, I was able to, or I forgot to. So now it's. I mean, Or do I have to change it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, let me tell you. All per column to be automated.
So if one does
So alter table and the name of the table, modify column, the ID of the column. Maybe.
Control
Yeah. Yep, right here. Oh, there it is. It's a check, oh, the AI. How does that all go?
I don't see the database section.
Oh, you first off space.
There was example that slide. You know, you would assume you don't.
So now we're from the database. You'll see that here. So now okay, so now let's run. So I'm just gonna run it again.
If that is highest rate in 35 years.
So I'm gonna add data, so your favorite movies, I'm gonna add data. Foods.
And it's like, I've always wanted to go.
There.
It's just
Or you can do that one.
It's a query.
Oh,
I guess that would be.
yes, I said, oh, you're reason.
Okay, so now you're successfully added.
That sounds strange, I don't know. I used to think that.
Yeah.
Once you get engaged and then married.
That's good to go.
Like, my views have changed so much because. Yeah, there's moments for them.
Yeah, just see if you can insert data into these again, using the thing that we gave you. Just try to insert it again. It's a lot easier if you use MAMP and just do my admin. I don't have any experience using this particular thing. That's kind of frustrating and like real problem of it. So my recommendation is to use PHP my admin instead.
Right now, I don't think he's like not
Spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to work with rely on this piece of software, because that's not what we're learning. We're learning MySql. We're not learning MySql work. Which I think is very people who use this every day and they know how it works and they know which so they have a PHP my admin. So you just use PHP my admin, you can type in the commands, you can see the table. Here.
Yeah. So I don't run it like that, and change, well, you can do it again, so we talk about it.
So you didn't actually add it to your world? You still add at least one row of data.
Yeah. So why don't you try this? Quit out of that. Let me see if I can get you set up on PHP my admin. So go ahead and put on that. Can I see?
Yeah, right.
Right there, show, select from. See what.
Oh, that's it.
No, it doesn't connect. How they want to select.
Yeah.
Okay, see this.
So.
Do you have NAMP or WAMP? NAMP, right?
Jonathan, does MySQL Workbench set up the server for you, or you have to, because I know MAP sets up an Apache server.
Well, no, Workbench connects to your SQL server. When you install SQL, it should have given you the option to install the server and the server runs locally on my computer. That's why with Workbench you connect to the server that's on your computer.
Or you could use Workbench to connect to a totally different SQL server that's actually on the server somewhere.
Right.
Which is what a lot of.
So how's that different than MAP?
I don't know, man.
Programming doesn't do it.
Well, it's not.
How does that differ from MAP?
MAMP is Macintosh Apache MySQL PHP. So it's actually for it's an Apache web server, it's MySQL, and it runs PHP. So it just basically gives you everything that you need to do on an Apache MySQL PHP website in a nice simple install package. So one of the things that it gives you is the PHP my admin. It installs MySQL for you automatically, and it gives you PHP my admin in order to connect it to it.
So if you're using then, the workbench, you have to make it a server.
How am I supposed to do?
Yeah, we're done.
I'll post her now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still available to sell. I was just, so I saw this. Yes.
So let's get that. The next thing is we're gonna want to go. See if you can just write those insert statements, I guess. Okay, because we don't have, I'll slack you out something as the basis. Hey, could somebody do me a favor and slack Fabian the insert statements that we did from our last exercise to insert data into the favorite movies, favorite songs, favorite. Thank you, Jackie. All right, she's gonna slack it to you, Fabian. Okay, are you guys? How many people are complete with that? Woo! Okay, a bunch of you. How many of you looked up the joins, inner joins, outer joins? Yeah, but we'll talk more about it. Just to look into it. How many of you looked up the other thing we told you to look up? What was the other thing?
Was to add a column and then the join.
Oh yeah, the alter. So how many of you figured out how to use alter? If you want to add an extra column, you did, Mario. Mapper, you didn't do that? Alter? No? How to alter the column, so like if you want to add another field, if you have first name.
Whatever.
Okay, so guys, what do you want to do? your class. Okay, so let's talk. Okay, we're gonna everyone switch gears, talk about homework. If you want, you can stay working on what you're working on, but we're gonna go to homework. What's that? Lesson plans. Oh yeah, homework is relational algebra. We are. No, it's not. Okay, let's read about the homework. No, Node.js and MySQL homework. Okay, everyone. Okay. In this activity, you'll be creating an Amazon-like storefront with the MySQL skills that you've learned this week. The app will take in orders from customers and deplete stock from the store's inventory by Sam. By Sam. And deplete stock from the store's inventory. Everyone, this making sense to you guys? You're making an online store. It's going to have inventory. Oh, come on, Jackie.
Can we use Firebase? Because I learned that one. I can make that work a lot easier.
Well, no, because we learned Firebase first. Now this is if you need the MySQL database. So it's going to keep track of your store's inventory. So how would this work? We'll have like a table for products, right? And each product will have an ID, and one of the columns in the table is going to be quantity. So say you have 50 bottles of shampoo you want to sell. Yes, Dan? No. No, but you have tables that are related to other tables, and that's how that works. And when we get into talking about Mongo, we can have collections inside of other collections.
Can you link across databases or just across tables within?
Just across tables within databases, not across other databases. Okay, so we didn't get very far with the homework. Would somebody else like to read? So as a bonus task, yeah. As a bonus task, well, you should be able to add as many products as you want. It'll just show them one by one. It shouldn't be like there's 5. Submission guide, yeah. So this is a command line interface app.
You just do Node, whatever the app is.
We're going to get to that part. You guys don't have all the pieces you need yet. We'll cover it another day. Okay, so guys, we will cover this another day, I guess. You guys can go and read this on your own, and we'll cover it. Challenge 3, supervisor view. So you're going to have a few things that you can do. The first part, we're creating an online store, but it won't be online. It'll just be a command line app. Guys, let's hold on, and we have 1 more minute of class, and then we can talk about stuff. So it's going to be an online store. The products will have each of these 5 fields. It's going to have the unique identifier. It's going to have a product name. It's going to have a department name. Makes sense because it will go with a certain department. Like if it's shampoo, it will go with beauty supplies. It's going to have a price, the cost to the consumer, and then there'll be how many in stock. So each time somebody buys one, you deplete the stock by 1. So you populate the database with about 10 different products. So you just make up some mock data. You do what we just did to insert it into the database with SQL, then create a Node application called Be Amazon Consumer, run the application. It's going to tell you what the options are for things you can buy. It's going to let you buy them. It's going to update the database. Make sense, guys? And we're going to look at the other part of this where we connect our Node.js apps to the database. So that's the big piece that you guys are missing. For this, what's going to basically happen is that you're going to run an SQL query like we did, where we say select star from table products, and then it will give you back a JavaScript array of all of the products as objects, and it will have all of the columns. So it'll be like product name, product quantity, price, etc. And then you just do the same thing that we've been doing to loop over all of them and show them in the connect.
So we're going to install NodeSQL.
Yes, that might be the one package that we're installing. We're going to install a MySQL database driver for Node, and then we're going to install also the ORM SQLize object relational mapper, and that's the thing that writes the SQL code for us. What?
I mean, we just started learning that. It's like there's 2 more classes.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's 2 more classes. You guys are doing great. Apparently, the other class didn't even have it installed, and they spent the whole class getting installed. So we're ahead of the game. Yeah.
What
John, what? Sorry, wait. I can't hear the question. What, John?
You select the whole list?
Yeah, it's already, yeah, it'll be the same thing as every week. Give yourselves a hand, guys. Great job. Awesome work, everyone. See you, Mario. Bye, Jackie. Yeah, somebody take the cake. Yeah, David.
I didn't bring my